Alright, hello, and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and it's Sunday, so we've got to look at some charts for the week ahead. Starting off with the dollar. The dollar has broken above this resistance. We are still kind of chopping around above it. The question is it going to run the hundreds and make it up to the 110s, or is it going to break down? Breaking down would obviously set off an enormous rally across most assets. The stocks, Bitcoin, gold, do you think would all benefit from a crashing dollar or a weakening dollar? We've got to be getting close, I think, but I just don't think we're quite there yet. So until the dollar can make a decision, if the dollar starts to run higher, then obviously we're going to see really bad things from all other assets. But if the dollar can eventually chop around and then break down, then I think that sets off an enormous rally across all assets. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens here. The S&P is, I think, close to a bounce. I think there's two scenarios on the table. I think there's a big plunge, which I don't think is very likely, but we have to be open to an enormous crash. Something that looks a bit like this. I think we have to be open to this, but I don't think that's very likely at the moment. And I think that given how much chopping around we've done in this area, in this neighborhood, I think that's a sign of strength more than weakness. We haven't just violated it and crashed below. We are still hanging on to it. So for me, I think we're going to perhaps open weak Monday and Tuesday. And then assuming we don't get a big plunge, I think we're going to make it back up to this trend line. That's what I think is going to happen. Once we get to this trend line, it's anybody's guess, but that's where I think all of my trades are going to come. I think we're either going to break this trend line and then take a long above the trend line, or we're going to use this trend line as resistance and enter a short position here, looking for lower lows. But I think all paths lead. I think whether we go down, sideways, or just open up strong on Monday, I think that we are going to hit this trend line, and then I think there's going to be a trade based off of that. Assuming we did break this trend line, there's going to be overhead resistance at this trend line. So just because we break this trend line, we can enter long. Well, I will be. But that doesn't mean that I just think it's a moonshot straight to new highs. I think that if we can break this trend line, then we're probably going to get hung up here. But either way, we've got clear theses for a trade and clear invalidation as well, because if we don't break this trend line, then it's a short here with a stop just above. If we do break this trend line, then it's a long here wherever it breaks with a stop just below, knowing that when we get to here, we might get into trouble. And if somehow we can break both of these trend lines, then new highs will be opened up, and everyone will turn bullish. Everyone will be forced to turn bullish, because if it can break this and move up and break this and move up, then how can you be bearish on that? The NASDAQ is telling a slightly different story and is slightly weaker, so perhaps this speaks to tech hesitancy, perhaps this speaks to rotation out of tech and into staples or defensives. But again, whilst it is lower lows, these are undeniably all lower lows, we haven't broken them and just gotten destroyed yet. We haven't plunged like we did back here. This feels very ordered at the moment, and therefore I think that we likely are going to open up weak on Monday and Tuesday and then move back higher. I guess we don't need this anymore. This would be our first line of repair. And again, similarly, got this sort of situation for overhead resistance. The Dow is, again, we've got wicks below, but the Dow hasn't even taken out this low here. And on a closing basis, you can see it's still above these other lows. So the Dow is actually showing relative strength here. And also, I called this head and shoulders, if you watch the prior video, all the way back here. I think we only had 1 or 2 candles when I said that we might round. And so far, we are seemingly doing that. So of course, if we can continue to round and then make our way up to this neckline, again, we've got really clear thesis for a trade. We could be long above a break of this trend line with a stop just below, targeting a measured move up here. Or we could, of course, get rejected off here, in which case it's quite an easy short with a stop above, looking for new lows. So either way, there's quite nice trade setups coming with just a little bit more patience. I said earlier that I feel like Monday and Tuesday are likely going to open up weak, and to further evidence this, we can look at the Bitcoin chart. Over the weekend, Bitcoin has been trending lower slightly, and is getting towards the bottom of its range now. This tells me that we can expect the stock market to open lower as well on Monday and Tuesday, and that perhaps the Bitcoin market is giving us tells as to the weakness that is coming early week this week. However, you might be wondering why I'm not super bearish and why I'm looking for a bounce before more bearishness, or a bounce and then to turn bullish. You might be thinking, but everyone's talking about recession. How is it that why am I so bullish at the moment? I'm not really so bullish. That's a poor choice of words. But I wanted to show you this. If I add the Dow Transportation Index over the top of this, then we have divergence. So the orange is the Dow Transportation Index, and you can see here, if I draw this trend line here, I'll just put this in red to make it a bit easier to see. The Dow Transport is making higher lows, whilst the Dow Jones Industrial Average is making lower lows, or lower lows here, lower low, lower low, lower low, lower low. Not necessarily undercutting the prior lows, but if we take it from this time point here, then the Dow Jones Industrial Average is making lower lows, while the transportation average makes higher lows. So if you know your Dow theory, this is divergence. And when you get divergence like this, it typically is an indicator that we are close to a bottom. So I think Bitcoin is telling us to expect a weaker open Monday and Tuesday, possibly into Wednesday and Thursday as well. But I think the Dow is telling us we could be close to a bottom. I also think, based on the S&P and the NASDAQ making new lows, but then holding around that area, not really plunging yet, I think we are setting up for some sort of recovery. So it'll be interesting to see how all of this plays out. Gold is still gold. I still think we're going to make it up to this trend line at some point, and then similarly, are we going to get rejected and have to go short, or are we going to break this and go long? If gold is really going to start a bull market, then I think it needs to do it soon. I said before, if it moves down into this area here, I'm not going to tolerate that for any length of time before I have to abandon my bullish thesis, at least for the near term. So I'd really like to see this make a move up to this trend line and then break out, but that remains to be seen. I'm not trying to impose my will on the market at all. And lastly, I'll take a look at oil here. Oil's a difficult one. On the one hand, we have broken this trend line, breakout, retest, resumption. This is usually a great entry, but I don't like this. I don't like this overhead resistance. This has been support, 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 and now resistance, resistance, resistance. So could this break above and then go? Yeah, absolutely. Could we get some sort of trap high and reverse? Yeah, absolutely. Everything's on the table. But for me, I think there's a trade coming, but I think it needs a lot more patience here. I think we're going to possibly get rejected off of this and then dip, and it's that dip that I'm interested in buying. So again, I'm not trying to impose my will on the market. I'm not trying to say I know what's going to happen. This is just sort of what I expect to happen, and if it does happen, then I know there's a trade there. But for now, I'm not really looking to take this breakout because of this overhead resistance. So certainly, if we get a rejection off of here and then a bounce down here somewhere, I'm super up for taking that trade. So follow along, subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications, and you'll get to see me do all this in real time, of course. So to wrap up here, I'll just leave you with this, because in times of volatility, you have to know what you hold, and things start to plunge. People tend to panic sell all kinds of things, and I mean, you've got to cover your own risk, you've got to fund your own margin calls, whatever you're doing, that's fine. It's none of my business. But for me, I see things like this and I just can't be long-term bearish on Bitcoin. The IMF is scared of Bitcoin, and you may have seen this, that Argentina has received a $45 billion bailout from the IMF with the stipulation. They added the stipulation later, I might add. They added a stipulation about 2 or 3 days after they gave the bailout that they could only accept the money if they banned their banks from facilitating all of Bitcoin and other crypto services. So you have to ask yourself the question, like, if Bitcoin is really not that good, if Bitcoin is worthless, if Bitcoin is, you know, whatever negative stuff people say about Bitcoin, why are the IMF, why are the IMF scared of it? You know, this Bitcoin is doing exactly what Bitcoin was supposed to do. And if this isn't evidence for you, then I don't know what is. So I hope you enjoyed the content. Follow me on Twitter, please, and subscribe to the channel. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll be back tomorrow with more daily content. Until then, I'm your boy Camel. Take care. All the best. Bye.